Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. My guest today is somebody I've known for a while. She's a trailblazer in the financial services space in Kenya and East Africa. Her name is Njeri Jomo, and she's the CEO and Principal Officer at Jubilee Health Insurance. Njeri today is having a conversation with us to talk about JForce, which is their new innovative agency and broker app that is helping to sort of streamline and transform the process of insurance distribution specific to health within Kenya and East Africa. And of course, we're in the month that is the International Women's Month, coming after International Women's Day. I think Njeri is somebody that would like to know a little bit more about her leadership style and what she's doing within the space, but also seeing how she sort of manages and transforms this industry, which, as we know today, is less than 3% insured when it comes to how Kenyans and others have adopted insurance across in the marketplace. Thank you so much for joining us, Njeri.
Thank you. It's definitely good to be here, Moses.
So, happy International Women's Month.
Thank you. Gosh, it's interesting how that's a thing, and there's a lot of conversations on why it really must continue to be. And as we take care of the girl child as well, just making sure that we also don't leave our young men behind as well.
Absolutely. The boy child also has to be taken care of.
It has to be both. It has to be both, yes.
So, Njeri, you've obviously accomplished a lot. You're sitting at the helm of this incredible organization where you're using technology in such interesting ways. But I want to hear your backstory, your background, maybe even growing up, or how you came through the professional ladder to where you are today.
Thank you, Moses. It's definitely a privilege and a big privilege to lead Jubilee Health Insurance, a great organization has done quite well for itself. But for me as Njeri, and that's a thing about success and progress, is that often people see us at the helm of things with our titles and our recognitions. But like an iceberg, the work happens long before, I think. And I think you become that leader long before you earn the accolades, long before, because you're going to have to choose a path of discipline and intention to be able to get there. I like to think I did not become CEO today. I like to think along the years, through my lived experiences and some decisions I've made, some right, some wrong, sort of got me to this point. I grew up in Tigoni, in Limuru.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
I lived in Tigoni for a while, by the way.
Did?
The years gone by, yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Beautiful place. And everyone says it's cold. I'm not quite sure we felt it. Something about the White Highlands, as they call them.
Yeah.
That's where I grew up for the bulk of my younger life. And when I joined insurance, it was almost one of those situations where I got into an insurance course and thought, hang on, this looks interesting. It was not something I'd ever thought about. But the more I got to understand it, it wasn't just sales. It wasn't people hooking policies. It was actually that it was risk protection. And there's a conversation around what's risk transfer, how does that work, why does it matter? And understanding it from a technical standpoint perhaps set me on a very interesting path. So the more I did it, I did many facets of it. I started off in underwriting and claims, so I really did start.
Really in the nitty-gritties, eh?
Yes, reviewing the risk. Because if you think about it, really, I call it a science, because you have to look at the risk and be able to quantify how much the client should pay you, which is what we call a premium, for you to carry that risk for them for the period that you've defined. So it's you remember the math conversation used to have on probability? The one people didn't like. So we go back to Pareto principle. It's a vital few. And for me, the more I did it, I thought, hang on, this is interesting. So I've always had a trait of being intellectually curious. It gets sparks going on. I really want to know more about it. And that's what happened for me with insurance. At some point, I deviated to insurance sales.
Okay.
That was a tough call because I was from the office and doing the technical stuff, and now I'm selling, and I had to redefine myself to understand that actually selling did not mean I was lesser than. And in hindsight, that's perhaps one of the best things that happened in my career, because I got to understand what it was like to deal with a customer, to face them, to listen to what it was, to be able to meet different kinds of people and position the same conversation in different ways, and be able to still get them to sort of find what matters to them and be able to understand why they would buy what you are selling.
And I think part of the challenge is that historically people perceive insurance as not necessary, more optional.
Agreed.
And I think, let's be honest, I think a lot of the insurance salespeople over the years have gotten a bad rap.
They have, and I'll say there's responsibility both ways.
Yeah.
I think there's history to how insurance as a career has been perceived, because a lot of people were considered to be dropouts and so on. But by the time I got into the career, I had to decide. Remember, I'd come from a technical side.
Correct.
I really did understand insurance. So I wasn't just trying to get you to sign the product. We had conversations on why this option and why not that option and so on. And that was huge, because for me, I had clients of all walks of life, and we'd have real conversations on what they were insuring and why they were taking on this product or the other. And I find that depending on how well you invest in yourself, how much do you know, and what kind of conversations are you having, I found that in fact, people will tell me, you're not your typical insurance agent, right? And it meant there was a positioning I'd chosen that was different, but it paid a premium, because I resonated with my clients, some who were friends to date, some who today insure with Jubilee because they've known me for years. Some who I meet in boardrooms who said, do you remember how we met? You sold me my first insurance policy. So that did happen back then, and was useful, and is very useful for me today, because while I sit as CEO, I'm not oblivious to the journey an insurance agent goes through. Because we can sit in our offices and make boardroom decisions. We can sit there and decide you're going to do this and you're going to do that. But half the time, because I have walked that journey in their shoes, later on I did lead a large number of distribution teams and all the different dynamics that go on there. I had the opportunity to begin conversations on professionalizing insurance sales as a career, because it wasn't just about selling. It was about how did you do it? How did you make the client feel, right? And did they get value from it? And I'm glad, because this is now a conversation that has gained quite a bit of momentum within the industry. So that experience for me became very useful for where I am today, because no matter how good your product is, if you don't have the right distribution and don't know how to get the best out of them, how do you get the product in front of the customer? And that's how concepts or initiatives like JForce come up, because I know what it feels like to be in front of the client. I know what can help that agent do better or not. But the beauty of this conversation is, because I had been an insurance agent, I was able to understand all the different aspects of whether it was a bank dealing with you or a broker dealing with you, what was the different situations they had to deal with. So later on, when I got back into Exco and management and so on, I was definitely not the same person. I understood a lot more. So I came back to my technical heart. I came back to understanding the strategic aspects of it, but I never lost the sales agent who's able to meet clients and be able to understand what it sounds like on the ground. So I think that's really been my journey. Along the way, I took a detour to asset management. And it was an interesting time, because it was when the Kengen IPO was coming on.
Okay, I remember that.
Yes, and I joined an asset management company, and perhaps another great fascinating phase of my journey, because I began to understand the markets, the bulls and the bears. How do this perform? What influences this? What are the cycles? You sort of look at, is it a 7-year cycle? What influences investments, return? How much risk? And being able to have conversations with clients on risk and return balance and what that means. I was also able to guide my clients through the initial pyramid and Ponzi schemes. You remember there was a lot.
All over the place at one point.
They were all over the place, and everyone was telling us about 7% return per month. So I had the advantage of walking the investment journey then. But Moses, why it was great for me is I already understood risk and risk management, and now I understood investment and wealth creation, and the two actually
they commingle, basically.
It's the same thing. And it's the journeys we do as corporates. Every year we plan our budgets, we have strategies, we look at risks, and then we decide which ones are we going to retain, which ones are we going to transfer, and so on. And insurance fitted right in. So that will be my journey to date, everywhere, on the shop floor, in the boardroom, in underwriting, and all of the other aspects that I think really make it useful for me to be effective in my role today.
I really like what you've described in terms of the journey, because it's kind of like there was the technical piece, there was being on the ground, as it were, in the trenches, learning what it's like to be an insurance salesperson, coming back into the investments piece. But I think when I look at it collectively, what I'm hearing is that you had this opportunity to really become the trusted advisor.
Absolutely.
And understand the customer with a very empathetic view. What are their challenges? How do we solve those problems? How do we protect them? How do we protect the investments and grow the investments? So you're really looking at almost a 360-degree customer experience, isn't it?
Yes, that is true. And that's a thing right there. Because I had clients who would call me and say, Njeri, I have 2 properties. Do I sell? What do I do? And I think there was even a season where we used to do articles for financial makeover for the nation. Back then it was a Tuesday, and people would send in their different scenarios, and I'd write advices in terms of this is what you can do, this is what you can do.
Wow.
So it became very practical for me, because the thing is, as we go through life, some of these things look obvious, but they're not, isn't it? How do you choose the right car insurance for you? What's the right decision? What's the right coverage for you? Do you really need optical, or do you need dental? What are your priorities?
Correct.
If I am investing, what kind of investor am I, right? And therefore, how do I be able to make sure that I am aligning, my investments to fit what I'm trying to do? Also, what is my personal plan for 5 years? I mean, I have children going to school in how many years? How do I make sure that I provide for those? Is it an education policy I should buy? Should I open a money market? Should I put the money in stocks? I think all of those aspects have been very critical in helping me understand all the dynamics of what a client faces. So today I don't consider myself an insurer only, because I think insurance on its own is just one component of the journey to wealth creation. It's sort of one of those things. If you're running a business, or for example, if you're going to buy a Boeing 787, you're going to need to have insurance to put it in the air, right? So insurance is just one component of a bigger financial services conversation that we all must be having, so that then we can be able to attain a certain level of financial freedom or be able to sustain it.
How do you bring this into the DNA of Jubilee? And maybe we can talk a little bit more about, can I call it the integration of that with technology, with digital transformation, so that at the ethos, at the core, it sounds to me like you are really caretakers, you are the trusted custodian, helping the customer get the most out of the financial services and the quality of life. But then how do we layer that on top of technology in our business processes, in our customer experience, so that these things are all working in harmony to deliver what's best for the customer?
I think it goes back to who Jubilee is at the very heart of it. And if you go back to Jubilee Holdings, we are an agency under the AKDN network, the Aga Khan Development Network. And when we go back to why the AKDN exists, if you look at how they came into this region of East Africa, is really around the Aga Khan's view, His Highness the Aga Khan's view of wanting to create better communities and be able to impact the communities in where the AKDN network operates, whether they're Ismailis or not. So there's no issue of, it's about regardless of race or creed, that generally the idea is to make sure that we are empowering the communities that are around us. And therefore, why all the agencies relate to some aspect of empowering the community. Is a DTB that will do, will be about financial aspects. If it's Nation, it's around media freedom and opening up that space. If it's about the TPS Serena area, is around, we are an area that thrives on tourism. It helps economic development for this area. And coming back to Jubilee, we are a financial services business that is holistic, in that we don't just do insurance, we also do asset management as well. And this ensures that we are able to serve the client holistically. Now, health insurance is one of the areas that we enjoy a unique space, in that we are not just a market leader in the region, and that we ensure the most number of customers within this region. And it's also the aspect that we have within the agency, aspects like Aga Khan Hospital, where you then find that healthcare is really a conversation for us, not something else we do as business. It is something that we think has a huge impact on our communities. So back to the conversations on technology investments, and we go back to, again, if we look at Jubilee, we are serving a customer holistically, but how do you serve the customer based on just segmented licenses? You have to be able to view the customer as one. You have to be able to ask, what does Moses need? Who is he? What are all the data points that are telling us who he is? And how do we serve him well? Now, using that, we then can create great solutions. And again, please note the word is not products. Because if it's a product, then I'm force-fitting it into your setup. With what I know about Moses, how do I create a solution that best responds to his issues? And so that then I can enable him, as again said, enable him to acquire financial freedom or sustain it, because we are all trying to do One of those two things. So when I look at it, then you come back to, if I look at you as one individual, then I can see the touch points. I can see you may be saving, and we say you need an emergency fund, right? And an emergency fund should be 3 to 6 times of your expenses, so that regardless of what happens, you are not getting caught off on a flat foot and you're unable to do what you need to do. So that should be available, and you should have it in a money market. No question about that. Then we move on to your aspects on how do you do your budgeting and so on. And there's many great conversations we have around helping our clients take better care of their money. Now, we go into what health insurance does. We often say if you don't take care of health insurance, it doesn't matter how much land you have, Moses. It doesn't matter how much money else you have elsewhere. Trust me, you're going to have to dispose it at the most inconvenient time. To take care of an emergency. As late as last evening, I was speaking to someone who was saying, help me, I'm at hospital X, they need a deposit. And I'm sort of thinking, that is our story every other day, because these bodies we really have no control of when they decide
to have an issue.
That we don't know how to do that. So what we leverage on technology to do is a couple of things. If you think about it, we are serving a customer, how well we understand them and how we serve them effectively. But the story of JForce comes back to, remember, about 70% of the insurance customer today intermediated. And I keep saying it goes back to who we are as Kenyans. We are very relational.
It's a cultural factor.
It is. So we say, great, digital is great, but how about we try phygital, right? Work with the person. Let the relationship exist, that they spoke to you, that they feel that they spoke to a human being, right? But how do you make it easier by enabling them with technology to have something that helps them to do a couple of things? One, help the client make the right decision. So it's easy to browse through options, come up with different scenarios, and give the client the best fit. And when the client says, I'm ready, now, you don't want to pull out the forms, and there's an issue with the forms on so many levels. It's not just, I think increasingly we don't have the time to fill the forms. It's also the conversation on data protection.
Yes.
Because once you fill these forms, where do they go?
It just always reminds me like the way when you go to buildings nowadays and there's that dirty book at the reception that you fill in your name and all.
Yes.
I always wonder what happens to that data.
You
That's
and
something
me both.
along the same lines.
Yes, so the same thing. So when you have this, you sort of want the client to put in the information. And once the information is in, it is leaving that straight to the office. And it means that someone is already working on it. Now, what happens on that the other end is we have already defined these businesses. If it already is a standard profile of a client, it's straight through within a matter of minutes. They have a policy document. They have their receipt. Everything is already done, regardless of where the intermediary is. So a lot of wins right there. They said right from data protection to the speed and efficiency of getting it done. But the intermediary didn't need to carry these forms. Didn't need to do data capture, and there's a lot of conversations on how many errors then come up and then make the claims process very inconvenient and so on. And they also didn't have to move the cost of doing business. They didn't have to move from one point to the other. Yeah. Right. And that then makes it a lot more worthwhile. And this intermediary can then serve a lot more customers from wherever they are. So we think this is going to present our intermediaries with the opportunity to do what we call nesting. They can travel to Kitale, spend a week in that town, and address the issue of access. They're going to tell as many people as they need to about, look, do you have health insurance? Can we do a couple of simulations? Can I onboard you? And without leaving Kitale, if they cross from Kitale and go to Nakuru, no problem. The business is already being worked on. The client is being sorted. And that allows them to leverage on their time a lot more efficiently to do more business. So a win for the customer because we are serving you faster, less errors and so on. But on the other end also, as you can see, for the intermediary, it allows them to be able to do a lot more business. And for us, JForce is big because it's not just the agent. It is also the bank, because that bank, and bank insurance is a big conversation today. Your bank is not just serving you on the side where they're saying, look, we have your money, we can lend you this money. They also are offering insurance, and that trend is now a lot more consistent. But they also are able to serve you from where you are, generate that quotation, onboard you when you're ready, and go back to their core business, which is banking, without having to move out from that process. And the same goes for the brokers. We think this is huge because if we go back to, you talked about insurance penetration.
Yes.
One of the biggest issues is about reach.
How many people can you actually get to?
How many people? And we think technology enables that, because technology on its own, and I think that's often a big conversation I like to have, technology on its own is not a solution. The strategy behind the technology is what makes the difference. What are you going to use it for? Right? And if the strategy is wrong, well, dumping technology there doesn't make anything.
As we say,
Yes.
garbage in, garbage out.
Agreed. So you have to know, what do you want to use it for? Because what it does is create efficiencies. What it does is transform organizations, but does a strategy exist? Does a goodwill exist? And what we have is, and I'm clear that any organization that is not just adopting technology, but adopting it in the right way today, I think the future is pretty bleak. And it's because our customers today are more demanding, they are more discerning, the demands are more. And as we say, the world is flat. So as Jubilee, I'm not just competing with the next insurer next door. I'm competing with anybody else who can provide that solution anywhere in the world.
On a global basis.
Yes.
So I have a question, because this is something that I've also observed. And I imagine that during your time, we've just come out of the pandemic. It's about 5 years now. My business, for instance, we still run remotely. We are literally giving up our office in a month or so. But I'm just curious to understand, what was the impact of the pandemic? Was it also an accelerant for digital transformation in your strategies, in how customers were engaging you? What did you see? Because for me, I feel like that was a pivotal point where so many organizations, mine included, literally changed how they operated. So what did it do to you guys?
It definitely was an accelerant, and I speak about this generally, insurance across board. It caused all of us to rethink, because there was need to be business continuity. So you can imagine that this was possibly going to, when you do BCPs, this is unlikely to happen, right? So you do simulations, but that kind of disruption, and you do know business has to go on, causes you to look at it and say, so how do we continue to serve the customer from wherever they are? Today, Moses, even if I needed to get everyone out of the office, they can serve from wherever they are. And I'll tell you, including my contact center, which is 24 hours.
No way.
Yes.
They don't have to be in the center.
No, they don't have to be in the center. So we're in the center for other reasons. Community, isn't it?
Yeah,
and all of that. But I'm not sure it's because it's about getting work done. Because what technology enables us to do is to measure output, isn't it? And I think you don't have to see someone. And I think that's the issue. In the past, the models were you needed to see someone to believe they were getting any work done. Today, with technology, you can tell how many work hours did you put in. And I think as we go into more Gen Z territory, this becomes more interesting, because they're asking, look, I put in my 8-9 hours. Why do you need to see me? Of course, there are many conversations. We have some joint meetings. I do need your input there. But I think it's a better secondary conversation than just that I just need you to come to the office for me to see you.
Yeah.
And if you look at advanced markets, they're able to measure output based on billable hours. I think as our market continues to mature, technology will accelerate that a lot more, where we will measure the output as real revenue in terms of, can I tell how much revenue Moses was able to generate for my business, regardless of the role they sit in. By doing what they did, the business then earned this. And therefore, and I think technology will continue to drive that. So for insurance, it definitely did. Today, as you know, if you need a digital certificate, if you need an insurance certificate sticker for your car, I'm not sure the last time you needed to go to an insurance company. You don't. You
get a thing on email, you print it, you cut it, and you put it on your sticker.
Exactly, and from anywhere, right? There's a way to validate if it's
the QR code. Exactly.
Yes, you can. So that moved very quickly. And as you're saying, for us, I'm a health insurer, so you can imagine the number of calls we are receiving in a day. I'm in hospital, I need this, there's a pre-auth, and we can serve you from anywhere.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So one of the things that I love about Jubilee, and again, like I've had the exposure to your colleagues in technology across the group, and it seems to me that you are one of the front runners in terms of general technology adoption. Of course, health is a sensitive space given the nature of the information and things you have to take in to get somebody insured, and of course their care. But how have you been using things like AI, and I know that you use robotic process automation to sort of enhance the business processes and the customer experience using things like robotic automation. Tell us maybe a little bit more about what you guys are doing in that space.
There's a lot that we are doing as an organization around our project we call Changamka. And it's been, the beauty of it is the level of buy-in across the organization on how much we do need to do with technology to give the organization a big leapfrog forward. Okay. One of the most interesting ones, and you've spoken to about AI, is the fact that today over 75% of my claims are AI adjudicated. And the error rate, you'll not believe it, is less than 5%.
Only 5%?
Less than
From a paper-driven process, as is currently the case?
Less than 5%.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
We have such efficiencies. And you see, that's the thing, because the thing about health insurance, it is one of the biggest businesses that are impacted by fraud, waste, and abuse.
Wow.
And there's a lot of money that goes in that direction, that when you get to renew your policy, you're sort of wondering, why did my premium go up? Fraud, waste, and abuse has a big impact on that. But I have to be able to show you as a client, this is where your money is going. This is what impacted your claims this year. One, reduce as much as I can, because I can flag it even before it happens.
Wow.
Right?
So it's proactive.
It's proactive in that I'm able to note even profiles that are more likely to providers who are more likely to.
So you have this pattern recognition going on. Yeah?
We do that, and it's how we then cue the systems to be able to pick on it quite early. But today we adjudicate using AI, which means we have reduced our payment. Because when you go to hospital, you leave. But today, for facilities, we pay, for most of the providers, we pay in about 30 days. We are able to adjudicate and pay the provider within 30 days. In some cases,
which is unprecedented in the industry.
I can tell you it is not done. And because today Jubilee is the largest payer for private insurers to hospitals, that matters because it impacts cash flows. It impacts their abilities to sustain their business. And therefore, for us, those efficiencies then get into conversations of us saying, so how do we grow our business together? But that would only be possible if we're leveraging on technology. It's not just that claims adjudicator, and people, we're prone to error. We could be great, but you will miss something. It will miss certain standardization aspects. And the beauty of it, this is not a system where we've just put in the system and let it do what it wants. There has been a lot of QA efforts to pull out samples, see how much does it relate. And we've been on this journey for about 2 years now. So we are able to tell you that we've come a mighty, mighty long way in terms of identifying how accurate it is. We are now in our next phase. We are going into inpatient adjudication.
Okay.
So it means that even as people are in hospital, we then are able to run that as well. And we expect the same efficiencies to go in that direction. So we continue to, at each stage, and I've said it's not been big bang. We pick one use case, use it.
Iterate.
Yes, we are using it for telematics in that today, from our client steps, we can decide how, we can tell them, look, this is how healthy you are, and more on the, not just the curative side where we pay bills, the preventative end of the wellness, of the health spectrum, where we're saying, this is a profile that's likely to. And today, one of our programs is our lifestyle disease management program, where we're able to look at our clients and say, okay, this is a high-risk client based on what we are seeing, and then manage them as such. And then those who are medium profiles, we manage them as such. And those who are low risk, we spend a lot of time on prevention, because we think the future of health insurance should be prevention. It shouldn't be about getting sick, because the cost is astronomical. By then, even we can't fully cover it for you. So if we can keep you on the preventive end of the spectrum, it will do a lot more. So today, Jubilee Health Insurance is privileged to be putting together an African data health set. In that, Moses is already logging in his steps, right?
Okay, so you start getting a sense of my health condition.
We are, and we already begin to say, okay, this one's, how does it then look like? More likely to get unwell? How frequently are we seeing the visits? What kind of conditions are we seeing? And that is useful, because we think that allows us to then begin to think about dynamic pricing. Can I give you your insurance that relates to you? If a guy wakes up every other day and has fast food, you're not the same person, so I shouldn't give you a one-size-fits-all pricing. Can I give you yours? Can I give you stronger incentives to leave your car and take a walk? Because that is the more progressive side of health insurance.
There's so many things I want to ask you. And I think because we've had the privilege of being on a panel a few months ago, I believe, I know that one of the areas that is obviously key, again, health insurance, very sensitive information. True. Can you tell us a little bit about the cybersecurity? I know you're able to answer this question because you did on my other panel, but obviously, yes. How are you securing your digital transformation?
We have made, if you're going to invest in technology, you have to be ready to make investments in IT security. No question about it. And cybersecurity is real. if you look worldwide, the biggest ransoms that have been paid out have been from health insurers. So we have a lot of sensitive data, that is true. And therefore, we have made significant investments, right? To having a SOC within our business. We do have both red teams and blue teams because we have to attempt to penetrate our own firewalls and technology to see where the
risks might exist.
Yes. And then being very deliberate about managing that. And what I like is, as Jubilee, this is not a conversation we're having as a side conversation. Every time we discuss technology, we do assessments for security. Even if you're doing a third-party integration, you must pass the tests for us to be able to say, yes, you have secured your data properly. Yes, we can see that you have made the right investments to protect that. Because, the issue of data protection is real. I don't just have your pinned data. I have a lot more. I have your health trends and so on. And we have the benefit of ensuring a lot of Kenyans and others who would be of interest. So for that reason, the investments are non-negotiable. As long as I said, you make the decision to invest in technology. It's almost like the minute you buy a bigger TV, you buy a bigger padlock. You have to be ready to spend money on security so that then you make sure that you're protecting yourself. And as we said today, all we're on cloud fully. Right, so we have to make sure that is protected as well. Of course, additional layer, because as long as you don't have on-premise, reduces the risks, right? But cloud also introduces its risks. Are you having proper assessments? And not just internal assessments, but we have external assessments as well to check how are we doing? Are there new exposures? And this is a daily conversation for the business.
I think it's so wonderful having this conversation because these nuances many times are lost on partners and customers. They just see an insurance policy, but what's happening in the back end? How's your data secured? Like you just pointed out, you're probably insuring some of the most significant members of society. And the fact that the data sits in your systems, it's of paramount importance that it's secure. But I now want to get to the fine point, which is JForce. This is obviously a huge initiative. I spoke to your colleague and he told me the way that this is going to be 100% onboarded with all your agents and brokers. But maybe we can tell us in as concise a way, why now, why this, and what's the roadmap going forward?
Why now? I think we are late.
Oh, really?
Yes. We have over 2,500 agents on a day-to-day basis who sell for us. Most of the tier 1, tier 2 banks are selling for Jubilee. We have most of the brokers already doing business with Jubilee. We wanted to make it easier. This receiving requests for quotes, and then there's time wasted there. It can be done more efficiently. We wanted them to be able to manage that on their own. This asking them, they are calling and saying, how much is my commission? Today we pay commission on a weekly basis. So I'd want them to be able to track it. Yes.
Fantastic.
So they can see it. But even if I took it beyond just the insurance agent, and I've said they can go anywhere in the country, do their business, and come back without reducing their cost of doing business. We then come back even to a bank. It means that if you're a bank manager, I'm giving you a tool that you can drill down to which bank assurance sales officer is generating revenue for you or not, because you can drill down. It's a performance tool. You can see what is going on. But on the other end, it is supporting the intermediary. It tells them when the client is having their birthdays. It tells them how much they're generating. It assesses things like closing ratio. So we're able to see where do we need to train more. We're able to see, this person has a big pipeline. What is the average premium size? Do we need to upskill them so then they can be able to do better? I think it then allows us, again, we go back to data. We can be able to know using technology. One, while we're supporting them, it's giving us such great insights on how we can make it easier. And it's part of a journey towards what I think should be our intermediary world, where we create a portal and platforms where they can fully self-serve, right? So that when they're there, we've given them everything they need to do business. It's about the ease of doing business for them, which as long as I make it easier for them, then it's easier for me. Back to the conversation on insurance penetration, we cannot address reach if we don't make it easier for them to do business for Jubilee. But the best part is this assists the customer to do business with Jubilee. And part of this journey and what we've integrated is an IPF, a digital insurance premium financing solution.
Oh.
Which means that as you check out, you've bought your policy, you've selected which one you want, you've gone through the option together with the intermediary. And even if you want to do it alone, we're happy to do that. But when you get to the point where you have to exit and you decide, okay, I don't have the money to pay all of it now, you can select to do it in installments, select the first installment, and then you indicate how the others will be done. And with that, you're already covered, even by the time we've just received your first installment. Now, this we think will address the issue of affordability, but also the issue of reach. And this too will move the needle quite significantly in terms of penetration.
So basically, you're lowering the barriers to adoption. That's what you've done. You're making it easy, simple, flexible for that potential customer.
The thing about Jubilee, ours is not talk.
You do it.
We want to do it. Then we assess the impacts. And there's a real opportunity for us to move the needle in this direction. Healthcare is a conversation that we can't have enough. We see it every day in our conversations with our customers, with the data we are seeing in terms of how early the lifestyle diseases are coming in. So this is not an if you need it. It is that you actually do need it, and how do we make it easier for you to have it at the lowest level possible. And even if you want to buy it in dollars, no problem. That we should be able to give it to you in whichever form you want it, and making sure that you can consume it in the way that best suits you.
So what I'm hearing you say is that J-Forces is part of a larger puzzle whereby you're leveraging technologies and strategies to lower the barriers to adoption, to reduce the friction, closing anything that potentially will stop. And ultimately, the big agenda here is how do we move that number from 2.53% to many more Kenyans being on insurance?
Absolutely. That is exactly what it is. It's part of a bigger story because, as you said, technology is just that. It's a strategy that informs it. So this is one piece. It takes care of one side of the conversations. But as I said, there's a lot of other things going just to make sure that by the time you look at it holistically, it's a beautiful story of how technology drives strategy.
Njeri, thank you so much for this conversation. You've given us so much, more than I could have hoped for. I think for me, what's super exciting is the fact that I think you've sort of pulled the curtain away in letting us know what is driving the technology adoption, what is the business strategy, the philosophy that is about caring for people, protecting them, helping them grow financially. And I hope our audience take away so much from this in terms of seeing the bigger picture that's behind what Jubilee Health Insurance is doing, but also understanding you and your strategy and your philosophy and what has gotten you to where you are today as the CEO of this organization that's doing amazing things.
Thank you, Moses. And as we say at Jubilee, we'd like to tell people there's living and there's living free.
Wow.
So we want you to live free.
Live free.
Yes.
I'm sold.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Njeri.
Okay.
So there you've heard it from Njeri. I think she's given us an incredible picture of what they're doing at Jubilee Health Insurance. More importantly, how they're actively adopting technology. The launch of their new product, J-Force, which is going to have 100% adoption within a matter of weeks, as far as getting the insurance agents and brokers to use it as their primary vehicle for onboarding and servicing their customers. And stories like this are so incredible to me because it's really the digital transformation in action as opposed to a lot of the talk we hear in the marketplace. So thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I hope you've gotten value from it, and we'll catch you in the next one.